we're going to go through a little bit of Mikey's career as we move on. But first, my first question to you, Mikey, is how does it feel to be retired from Adidas after so many years? I think you joined them in 1988.
Yeah. 50% of my life has been at Adidas. When I sit there and think about it, it feels strange. I've got to say, it does feel strange. I get up in the morning and not have to go charging off all over the country to do things, or not being sort of in the office all the time. And it does feel sometimes when I go out, I really feel as though I should be working rather than enjoying myself. So, yeah, I'm getting used to it gradually.
But you've been so active, I mean, for all that time. In many, many ways, not just on the raids, which is the visibility things, but, a lot of people don't know how much work you do behind the scenes, various committees, your international kind of profile. Is brand protection something you wanted to do at the beginning when you?
No, never. I mean, when I first started working, those kind of jobs just didn't exist. It was, to be honest, when I left school, I just wanted a job with a white lab coat. I wanted to work in a laboratory. And I did start work initially for what was Great Universal Stores, GUS, working in their laboratory, just testing all their products. And then I moved to a Marks and Spencer supplier because I was trained as a garment and textile technologist. So I went as a garment technologist at a Marks and Spencer supplier. Then I was made redundant and I was unemployed for a couple of years. And I was very fortunate. I got offered 3 jobs in the same week. And I don't know quite what made me choose Adidas because, I mean, I'm not, you can tell from the shape of me, I'm not the greatest sports person in the world. I took that and I was doing the job as a garment technologist there. And it was just a case of drifting into this kind of work. As I say, it just never crossed my mind when even when I joined Adidas.
Well, you're a scientist, Mike.
I wouldn't call that. But if I'm absolutely honest, when I did get the white coat, it spent most of the time sat on the desk as a pencil holder. I very rarely wore it, but I mean, I did that job for probably about 11 years.
I was interested in reading, though. I was reading something about you, and you said that you regarded yourself as a facilitator. And, people look at the word facilitator and think it's a lesser skill. And I wonder if you could tell us all a little bit about how important you see this particular talent in the anti-counterfeiting world.
I'm not sure I can remember actually having said that, but I must have done at some point. When I say facilitating, I see it myself as helping the job go along. It was always a case of when people wanted me to turn up at a place, I would turn up at a place. If people with things like transport and storage, then yes, I would. And then when, the job was done, I would go away, as was always the case. It was a case of doing as I was told, really. But we gradually, as a company, Adidas got this sort of reputation, if you like, as a go-to company when you're doing a raid, if it was a big raid and you needed help. So when I say facilitating, I tend to think of it helping out like that rather than anything else. I'm just as committed to doing the job as anyone else. But, I was perhaps in a more fortunate position in that we were able to provide these extra, if you like, add-ons for doing it for jobs?
Typically modest, Mike, if you don't mind me saying, but I remember that first meeting, and there was a complex mix of people that attended that meeting, and you were able to get people moving in the right direction quite easily. But I think that's down to your personality, but also to your skills as well. So yeah, it was very impressive, very impressive. I just want it's 35 years of doing this, roughly 35, perhaps a bit more. What's given you the most satisfaction, do you think?
The most satisfying, I was thinking about that this morning, and if I'm totally honest, I think it was the 2012 Olympics. We worked hard with the Olympic Committee, going around training authorities for what to look for. We worked with the border force, in helping them to identify goods. We even provided storage areas around the country so that if people actually seized product, they could get it away and into safe storage quite quickly. And it was a glorious summer. I had 3 weeks in a hotel in the centre of London, meals paid for, wandering around the streets, and we never actually seized a single thing because it was so clean. It was just a joy to be there, and people were so friendly, and you never felt in the slightest bit threatened, which you do in some parts of London, let's be honest. And I really enjoyed that time, and I don't know whether or not, we made a big difference. I like to think we did.
Well, I think you did. I mean, I know you just talked about the 2 weeks, but I actually remember going to a meeting that you attended just after the 2008 China Olympics. And that's where you began to build, well, all of us, I guess, began to build up a strategy for a fake-free London. And so again, typically modest, but it took you 4 years to get to that very nice 2 weeks. And I think a lot of people are grateful for that. But I just on that, there must be parts of the job that really irritated you. I wonder if you'd like to divulge some of those, perhaps, or just one of those.
I suppose, I mean, it's difficult for the people in authorities like trading standards and police and border force to understand what it's like working for a big company. And I think it's the same with all big companies, that you get bogged down in paperwork and administration and things like that. And there are times where I've kind of thought, I could be out there actually doing the job rather than sitting here writing reports and filling in forms and justifying this, that, and the other. That's the biggest thing. But I mean, having said that, I was always grateful to work for a big company like adidas, because when the pandemic hit, they were able to keep me employed all the way through that. I wasn't furloughed. I was working. So there are pluses and minuses of working for big companies like that. But I suppose the other downsides are when you've got information on a suspect that you would like somebody to do something about, and you go to these people with packages and saying, we've got this, we've got this. Can we go and knock on their door? And not everybody is as interested in doing that as some of the people that are on this meeting today. It's got increasingly where people are putting obstacles in the way of doing things rather than getting out there and actually doing the job.
How do you think a large company like, and a successful global company like Adidas, how do you think they view the threat of counterfeiting? I mean, is it one of their key aims in sort of protecting the brand? How does it fit in with a company of that size?
It's a very difficult question to answer that. I mean, the people that I worked with in the intellectual property department, they saw it very, very seriously, and they fought tooth and nail to get the right budgets to allow me to do what I did in the UK and my colleagues do all over Europe. People in different parts of the company see it differently. I mean, sales, their most important side of things is obviously going out and selling. And to the accountants within the company, if you go out and sell 50,000 pairs of trainers, you can see an immediate effect on the bottom line.
Yeah.
If I seized 50,000 pairs of trainers, there is no immediate positive coming out of that. Yes, it's nice and it looks good and all the rest, but it has cost the company money for me to actually go out and do that. And it's a continual battle that the people in that department have always had to fight. You know, everybody thinks it's great. Everybody thinks that you go whizzing around, as I used to call myself, trefoil man, with, you know, my underpants outside my trousers, knocking in doors and, you know, rescuing all sorts of things. Whereas they don't see the hours that are spent in the build up to that. They don't see the jobs where you actually find nothing. They don't see the hours where you're spent sat outside a courtroom waiting to give evidence. They just think it's a very glamorous job. And I always used to try to get people to, you know, come along and see what I did, because that would give them a better insight. But generally, I mean, the company is supportive. I mean, the company, I keep saying that as though I still work there, but the company did recognise that there is a value in brand protection and its trademarks, perhaps not to the level of the likes of Coca-Cola and people like that. I don't even think it probably appeared in the accounts as a on the profit and loss side, you know, for the trademarks, but there is a value in it, and yes, they do see it, especially when something is going, you know, not particularly well. They were desperate when the Olympics were on for it to be a clean market. And yes, we got all kinds of support there. I honestly, you know, I don't envy Rachel, who's taken over from me, in the fact that she's got to get the people on her side. She's got off to a great start, don't get me wrong, absolutely fantastic. But there is, you know, individuals that have all got their own jobs to do, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, and half the time you're seen as stopping them from doing what they want to do until something goes wrong, and then everybody beats the path to you.
Well, you've seen some huge changes, I'm sure, at Adidas, but, you know, there's been a lot of changes, I think, in public enforcement as well. You know, trading standards, police, border force, and all the rest of it. How do you see that over the time that you've been involved in brand protection? I mean, has it been progressive, or is it, you know, I think there's probably aspects that have moved backwards.
Yeah, I mean, there's positives and negatives. I mean, there are people out there that take a very great interest in helping us. There are other people out there that say, you know, oh, big brands should be able to look after themselves. The legislation, I don't think, is necessarily kept up with the changes in counterfeiting. There have been some marvellous things like the Trademark Act, the 94 Trademark Act, and things like that. But lack of resources is the main problem, I think, for everybody, whether it's on the brand side or whether it's on the policing side of things. And it's also, you know, getting the right people in the jobs that really are interested in doing that. There is an art in finding the right people in each authority. If you go to the wrong one, well, then you get turned away. But if you get the right person, then I've got nothing but praise. These guys will bend over backwards and do anything to help you, as long as they know you're interested.
Yeah, I guess the pandemic as well shone a torchlight on the resourcing issue. You know, because although there were restrictions, the online sales took off, and we, and with a lack of resources to look into that and on the ground. I mean, resourcing in trading standards is probably the key that I would say. They've been the front line for a long time in this, and they must have been your closest working partners, I guess. So the resource in there must have had the most impact, do you think?
I do, yes. I mean, we had very close relationships with lots of people up and down the UK and in Ireland whilst I was doing the job, and to see people being either let go or moved to other jobs and no one coming up to take their place, it's very difficult to retain the enthusiasm, I suspect. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Counterfeiting has moved from when I first started it. It was a very easy thing, if you like. It was, I always used to say, a blind man on a charging horse could, and there's far more resources put in on the counterfeiters side and the enforcement side.
A lot more money and profit there too, I guess. But
profit. I mean,
going back to the pandemic, what we noticed, of course, was how dominant e-commerce became.
Yeah.
And I think, we all saw that and became really concerned. Do you think the large e-commerce companies do enough?
Well, they can always do more, can't they? I don't necessarily say that e-commerce is where the problem lies now. I think it's social media is probably where a lot of the problems lie. And, those sort of companies are just not interested, I don't think, in so much cleaning up their mess. I mean, the likes of the eBays and the Amazons, yes, they have got processes in place that do help, and they are prepared to work with the brands, I think. I've always found in the past that the social media, the Facebooks, the Twitters and all that, it was very difficult. I think things are getting better, but I think there's a long way to go. And I think the counterfeiters caught on quite quickly that they could hide behind the security protocols within the social media companies more so than with the likes of eBay, where they were prepared to divulge that information to you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of calls at the moment, of course, for the e-commerce companies to do more on the prevention side.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how Adidas saw that.
We worked quite closely with the likes of eBay, and I forgot what they called it. They have a team out in Ireland, and they always maintained to us that there were hundreds of thousands of sales that never saw the light of day that were taken down before they were, if you like, ever put up. You can follow that. And we used to go out there and we would do training days with that team to, fully bring them up to speed on what the latest products, the latest trends, the things to look for. Basically the same as we used to do with the ACG roadshows, to go through it all. And we would sort of say, all right, you've got the new Manchester United shirt here. If you see it being offered before such and such a day, it's obviously wrong because it's not been released to the public yet. Or if you see, Yeezy Boost trainers in a particular colour, that's wrong because we don't make that colour. I mean, it is difficult because these people, like the trading standards and border force and all the rest of it, are working with so many different brands, and it's difficult to get them to take on board the information because there's so much that human beings can take on board. And I've always said, okay, well, if you take one thing away from this, then I'm a happy bunny. Whether it's the fact that the football shirts say Adidas jersey, whether it's the fact that the security labelling, whether it's the fact that the logo's touch in the wrong place, things like that. Just simple little things. If you've got suspicion, come to us. Saying us again. And we would do the in-depth work for you. And we used to do exactly that with eBay. And I know my ex-colleagues in America have a very good working relationship with the likes of Amazon. The Chinese websites, well, I mean, it's a jungle out there. And my ex-colleagues in China and Hong Kong and the Far East work very hard, but it's like pushing a snowball up a mountain. Really, it's hard work.
Well, a lot of people know you for the visibility on the raids and, your support for enforcement. One of the things that struck me about you throughout your career as well was that you spend a lot of time on that outreach stuff, that stuff that, raising awareness, giving information to help enforcement, because that's the other side. And one of the other problems that we've always had, of course, is demand. And we tend to use a lot of messages to try and convince consumers that it's not the right thing to do. And I'm not sure if how you feel about this. Are there any of those messages over the years particularly worked? Are the ones that we should avoid?
I don't know. It's a very hard one, that, because I mean, I've seen the statistics that you guys have put out in the past that even when you tell people that these things are counterfeit and that they are dangerous, some people are still prepared to go and buy them. It's almost along the lines of getting people to stop smoking or getting people not to drink and drive or putting seat belts on. It takes a long, long time to change hearts and minds over things like that. And again, you're up against this thing that some people will always sit there and say, oh, well, the big companies, they can afford it. What harm does it do? And things like that. And you'll never get over that point of view with some people. And then there are other people, yes, you can point to the fact that it goes to organised crime gangs and that money goes into unscrupulous areas like money laundering and slave labour and stuff like that. And people will take it on board for a short period of time, but then the habits reoccur and they just go back to doing that. I mean, we've seen that, and Graham Mogg will testify, the number of times that we have been down in Cheetham Hill in Manchester, and the crowds all stand there and say, have you got nothing better to do with your time? You're stopping us from buying our snides. And they know darn well what they're buying, but they're still prepared to go and buy it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would get over that mountain. It's going to take a long time. And I think it would take a lot of money as well to do it. Until you get the government to put their hand in their pocket, and their hands in their pocket on so many different things at the moment, I don't know how you're going to do it.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I heard it once called stealing from the stars, because they did, people don't care,
No.
For instance, oh, the Rolling Stones can afford that sort of thing. And I remember when I went to Brussels, and I was still dealing with that. That was 8 years after I joined forces with you. And they were still saying, well, we're not here to protect big business. You know, they'd missed the link between the money and the investment coming from big business and the jobs
Yeah.
and the counterfeiting. And then there was another one where we were tending to use the terrorism message, and it was failing. And I remember somebody saying to me then, you know, look, they're buying this stuff from Bob down the market. They know Bob's not a terrorist, and if they disbelieve you about that, they disbelieve you about everything. So I think I would agree with you. The one thing I was going to ask you about on this was, you know, the policymakers, and I've been there, I've been one, and business leaders even. Do you think they really get the message? You know, I'm conscious that, you know, very little was mentioned about the dangers of counterfeiting by the government during the pandemic. And what we've seen now is that the online safety bill excludes dangerous counterfeits. So I'm just wondering how you feel about that. Do you think we've made any impression on them over the years?
It's hard to say. It's doubtful. I mean, part of the problem is especially with government and business leaders, they don't tend to stay in the jobs for any particular period of time, and you're having to put out the same message over and over and over again to new people before they have the chance to really get their teeth into it and do something about it. And yeah, I mean, going back to what you were saying, I mean, the thing that people don't get is that it's the amount of resources and money that big businesses put into creating these products, into creating the marketing furore about it, creating the demand and the jobs and the taxes that they pay. Everybody just thinks, oh well, you know, it's just the way life is. You know, if we can get it for half the price the brands pay, what the heck? The fact is that if it started affecting individuals in their jobs, then they soon start shouting. But brands like Adidas and Nike and Gucci and all the rest of them are just seen as, like you say, you know, playthings for the stars, and you know, it doesn't affect them, which it dramatically does. But that said, getting to like the heads of these big organizations, like the head of Adidas, he would, you know, say, yes, of course we're interested in protecting the brand and the equity within that. But then his most important part is getting sales over the line, keeping shareholders happy and things like that. So it's a tricky balancing act. It really is.
You know, we saw again, going back to the pandemic, the sort of rise of e-commerce. It's been rising, of course, for a number of years. What do you think would be what in the coming years now? Is that where the biggest threat lies? Is it e-commerce? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I first started, most of the counterfeits that we saw were produced domestically and sold on the market. Well, with the demise of a lot of the markets, that doesn't happen so much nowadays. But then we started to see counterfeits coming in from other countries in container loads. And the problem there was that if Border Force seized a container load, they lost everything. Now it's got down so low as that they will send individual pairs of trainers or T-shirts or handbags direct to the consumer, and it's very easy for them with technology. They create websites that look just like the real thing. They have all the payment systems that the real thing has, and they take the money, they send the product. If it gets stopped by customs or border force, oh well, tough luck, we've had the money and we don't care. It's the consumer that misses out. And, going forward, I see more and more of this being the problem. I think consumers are happy they're getting stuff cheap. They don't accept, of course, the fact that the thing will drop to bits or the dies will run or whatever over a very short period of time. They don't care because the price, they just go out and buy another one. So it is the way that counterfeiting is going to be affected going forward, I think.
And it's a swiftly changing environment, as we know.
Yeah.
You mentioned technology coming in. The borderless societies that we're leaving now. The transportation links are better. The changes that they've adopted to the single packages that they send over. All of that. I mean, is it time perhaps to change the way enforcement looks at this? I mean, in America, they've got this IPR center where they bring together enforcement agencies from the borders, from policing, and from market surveillance and whatever. I mean, is that something that would perhaps stem the flow, or at least
I don't
give us a
think it
better
stems though,
option?
but it would help enormously. And I've always been an advocate of wanting, if not a national, at least a regional setup to look at these things, because the problem you've got at the moment is everything is controlled by local councils, local police authorities, and to a certain extent, they would not cross borders from, say, Lancashire to Cheshire or something like that. You need regional authorities with specialist people involved in that to get over that, and there is all sorts of skills that need to be brought to play in these sort of departments, and the smaller departments just can't afford to have those specialists on their side. But when all said and done, if it was done properly, the whole thing would be self-financing, because you could use poker to a far greater extent, and the monies would finance it, if not necessarily make a profit, but it wouldn't cost that much to run. And the way it's set up at the moment, you've got councillors that are just sort of looking after their own little empires, and it goes totally against the grain, I think, with some people to share with somebody else. It's sort of like, I know something you don't type of thing. And
Yeah.
you're gonna, it's got to come eventually, because I mean, none of the trading standards or police or border force can afford to do this on their own. They need to join up like that.
There's our lobbying plan, everyone. I don't know if there's any policy makers around, but that's what we're aiming for next. So
Well, it's got to
yeah,
be.
you see,
And
Mike,
it works in America, doesn't it?
you'll never give up, Mike. We
Yeah.
won't let you. In 35 years, Mike, you've seen a lot of the darker side as well. There must have been times when that have really given you a smile on your face. And I was just wondering if you could recall some of those for the guys who are on the call.
I mean, I remember one Christmas doing job in North Wales, on a market in North Wales. And it was the same old thing. It was much easier in those days. They had teams of people on this market, and they had sweatshirts, and they had tracksuits and t-shirts, and they were all on a tarp. And of course, as soon as you moved on the market, then the word would go out, and the whole thing would disappear very quickly. And we got one guy, and he was very pleasant about it. He sat there and talked and all the rest of it. And all he said is, well, I just thought you'd have better things to do on the last Sunday before Christmas rather than come out and disturb us. why are you doing this? You know, but he left at the end of the day with a cry, well, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you again next year. And I mean, we did that also down in South Wales on quite a few occasions. We would go around the market, and these guys would go, oh, it must be Christmas. The guy from Adidas is here.
I remember, I think you were on the radio when we were at Wembley Market when we tried consecutive sort of operations there at one time, and the stocks were getting worse and worse at the time, and eventually one of them just took off and left all of his stocks there, and a little old lady came along and wanted to buy something and said, "How much are these?" And one of the brand protection guys said, "Well, Mrs. Today they're free."
Yeah.
I thought that was the difference. We would have taken it all now, and it just, you know, she took what she could take. She had arms full of it. I
also remember on Wembley Market when trouble sort of started with the market, the people running the market, and we used to go for a walk round there with the police authorities, and you would see them clearing the stalls as we were going. And we kept pointing at it, well, there's that lot there, and that lot there, and that lot there. No, we're not interested in that. We're only here to see what's going on today. And then we came across a rucksack that was full of porno DVDs. And by God, they moved quick to get those at that time.
Well, Mike, I mean, you've had a tremendous career, and I guess, you know, one of my final questions for you is what's next for you? I can't believe that you're just going to hang your boots up in a...
I don't know yet. I mean, I'm still getting used to working on my own, you know, being at home and just pottering around and things like that. So I've not had a chance to get bored yet. And
No?
I'm still trying to relax a bit, you know, and getting over the fact that I keep calling it as if I am working at Adidas when I'm not working at Adidas. I don't know. I mean, I had all sorts of plans of what I was going to do when I left, whether it was learning to cook better and look after myself better and, you know, traveling and things like that. I even once contemplated the idea of writing a book, but I had the title for it, which was You Just Wouldn't Believe It. And but my memory is not that great for details nowadays, so I don't know whether that would ever happen. I mean, one or two people have said to me, you know, if you do get bored, just come to us. We'll soon find you something to do.
Yeah.
And I might well do that in the future, you know, perhaps just to keep my hand in. I do miss it. I miss the guys and the girls. I miss going out on raids. I miss the camaraderie. And it was a great feeling when you sort of kicked a door in. You just didn't know what was going to be behind it, whether it was going to be full of Adidas gear or absolutely nothing. And I miss the nights out, and I miss the ACG and the road shows and everything like that. And it's very quiet here because there's only me at home. So I'm forever lastingly ringing up, you know, the different brand owners that I work with just for a chat at times, just to
I'm sure Graham Mogg would welcome you on any of his operations. An advisor, senior advisor to the Mogg. I think that would please him greatly, to be honest with you. We got a few minutes left, and I was wondering if anyone on the call has any particular questions for Mike while he's here, and while we've all got a chance to learn from his experience and his views. Oh, Sean Revai.
Yeah, it's not a question. I wanted to be here today really to give Mike thanks on behalf of all my colleagues from Trading Standards up and down the country, because I know how much you appreciate and how much you're going to be missed. It's without the slightest exaggeration. When we've talked a lot today about the levels of support from Trading Standards over the years, how they've gone up and down. it's no exaggeration. Without Mike Roylance, there'd be far less IP enforcement done by trading standards across the country now than there is at the moment, because the amount of support that Mike's given to trading standards over the years, particularly in terms of the storage problem, by the paying for storage for trading standards, he's enabled many jobs to go ahead, which would never have happened otherwise. I think Mike and I both agree with the old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. And I think we've both worked that way over the years. And it's true, sometimes it's taking excuses away from people. So as a TSO, if you go to your manager and say, I want to do this job, the first thing they're going to say is, well, we're going to store it, or we can't afford it. Mike took that excuse away, and that's allowed so many more jobs to go ahead, which would never done otherwise. And it really is no exaggeration. I think single-handedly, Mike's probably done more to foster that relationship between trading standards and industry than anybody else in this field over the years. And he will be sadly missed. From a personal point of view, I started in trading standards in 1986, so Mike's been a feature of my career all the way through, and he's made it immeasurably easier for me, both as a field TSO and then as an IP lead. Without Mike's help, my job would have been immeasurably more difficult. I mean, we spoke about the Olympics. I was the London Trading Standards lead on IP for the Olympics. 2 years solid, really. We put in so much work preparing for it, and the support Mike gave to us and the training, he couldn't have made things more easy to us. And it all passed off relatively uneventful in the end, didn't it, Mike? Much to our relief. But that, again, is due to the work that Mike and his colleagues put in beforehand. I think we scared a lot of the criminals off because they knew we were prepared for them. I can remember Mike giving me his email. Well, it's not just his email address, his phone number. So it'll be on 24 hours a day. Give that to all your colleagues in London. I'll be based in London if you need me any time of day over those 2 weeks. Just give me a ring. I remember all you asked for in return, Mike. You just wanted a contact at each borough in London, and that seemed simple enough. But I had to negotiate that, and people again were coming back with excuses why they didn't want to give it. And in the end, he embarrassed me into doing the same thing. I gave Mike my phone number so you can ring me 24 hours a day, any day as well, because I felt we had to offer that in advance. But as I say, it came and went without much of a hiccup, didn't it, Mike?
It did, yeah.
You gave us the support again with storage. You paid for 2 storage units in London, one in the east and one in the west. If anyone's seeing it, it was there free of charge. I mean, in the event, it was only Handley, wasn't it, from Cardiff? We see something, drove it all the way down from Cardiff to store it. But I say that the fact it went off so smoothly, again, I think is really down to a lot of the work that you put in. And I say personally, I want to thank you, but to thank you on behalf of everyone in Trading Standards as well. And you will be missed. And it's hard to imagine life without you in the IP world, to be honest. Over the years, as I've moved into a management role, we've not had as much contact as we had in the past, but I shall certainly miss you. And I know that speaking on behalf of my colleagues across the country, we all will. But just to wish you the best in your retirement, Mike.
Well, thank you. You make me blush with all those compliments. And it's teamwork at the end of the day. I could not have done my job without you guys. So it is down to me to help you to help me in one sense. I just couldn't have done it, and it has been great. I've formed some really great friendships over the years, like with yourself and a number of the London authorities. And I understand the hardships that you went through for 2012. It was it was incredible that people weren't as forthcoming as yourselves, but we got there, we did the job, and we had a good result. And I can't say anything other than thank you guys. And I just saw a message flash up about, from the Border Force. I mean, Border Force equally helpful to me as trading standards. I just can't thank them enough for the work they do, because it's not the easiest job in the world. They sit there, they're opening parcels, they don't know what's in those parcels. I mean, some of the parcels that I've opened with them when I've been at Coventry and at Heathrow, you wonder why there's all sorts of things that jump out and bite you from where they come from. And they're happy to do it. But it all comes down to, I think, again, the brands showing the willingness to participate. You can't sit at your desk and just wait for them to come to you. You've got to go and show them that this is something that you're interested in. And if it is, then they'll respond in kind.
Mike is ever typically modest, and I'll go back to where we were right at the beginning when I mentioned the great facilitator, which is what you are really. You brought people together. You've yeah, I know you're modest about it, but you have brought people together from both sides, public and private sector, and even worked with some of the most difficult policymakers, and that's been your great strength. 35 years, and
I see it as being a small cog in a big machine.
Yeah, well, the big machines don't work without the small. The big machines don't work without the small cogs, Mike. And I'm delighted that we've been able on numerous occasions to reward you with our ACG awards. You've set a standard which many people will find it very difficult to achieve. And apart from that, you've been a great friend. We've got time for one more question from Kenred Elworthy. So, Kenred, over to you.
There somewhere.
Yeah, the guys. Sorry, we can't hear you guys.
Ah, there he is.
Sorry, it's a double act. Hi, it's me and Robert Pinchin. We've just come back from an operation. So great to see you, Mike. And just say thank you. Yeah.
Our days at Chelsea, Mike. Thanks ever so much for all of your help there.
I don't know that I contributed a great deal, but we tried. I was willing to turn up. That's the main thing.
No, it's absolutely, legend. Because I think I won't sort of say much more, but I just think in terms of getting things done, getting solutions to problems, and just the fearlessness. I mean, we've heard plenty of activities, but what we really learned as a team, especially in Dagenham, was just the fear. Not taking unnecessary risks, but just keeping your mettle and just getting things done. So, no, thank you. Really learned a lot.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
We've basically come to the end, Mike. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you for the last 20 years, actually, and working with you. And I think everybody who's just spoken has just highlighted, how important you've been to all of us. Yeah, you've been a highlight. You've been someone for all of us to look up to. We still will. You've set the standard, and don't leave us. We want to be around, and we want you to be around. So thank you very much for doing this, Mike. I hope you enjoyed it. Didn't find it too arduous. And but I think these guys here wanted to show their appreciation. And by the way, there are over 50 of them on this call, and all feel very appreciative of all you've done. So thanks very much once again. I'm going to put my hands together. You won't be able to hear us all, but Mike, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Stay in touch.
I will indeed.
Thanks, everyone.
Don't get rid of that easily.
Take care, Mike. We'll be in touch.
Okie dokie. Cheers.
Thanks very much.